Even in the Naga area still now, opium cultivation is a source of income. Opium itself is a cash, it's a currency, it's a food. Even the church members, because of the lack of economic development in the area, opium is still used as a currency of exchange. I chose this personal day, this Sunday, because I would like to bare myself naked before the Naga people and before God.
Hello everyone, this is Max Naga common public platform. Hodai apni kan la samne de ahita ga ni chana ajbi moi. Yedi ami kan laga Ato Kilonser sir Isak laga computer de ahigena sir ide behind de apni kan te laga kiman supporters ase NGOs hobi civil organization hobi civil win hobi army hobi kiman jun ase apni kan ite dekhiwa pari ase to kwa lechina ami kan kiman orders after orders olaigena ase to আমি সব ক্লিপ না দিলেবি সব পাবলিক লা হাতে পুঞ্চি গেনা আছে মই তো সব ডিটেইল বার নকব হলিবি আজি আহি গিনা আমি খান স্যার আইজাক লগদি ইন্টারভিউ লব পারিছে তো তাই বড় কি কই আছে কি मतलब আপনি কান জুন তো আগে দে ভিডিও ভাইরাল দেখাইছে কি ফুড হ্যাবিট দি আমি কান তাইলা ফুড হ্যাবিট দি আমি কান ইন্টারভিউ বলে কথা বি নাই কিলা মানে তাই বি কই আছে কি ক্লিয়ারলি তাই বড় কই দিছে কি নাগা মানুলা একটা লিডার্স গ্রুপ বলে তাই বি চেঞ্জ হব লাগে তাই নিজৰ চেঞ্জ হব লাগে কই কিনা তাই ৰিয়েলাইজেশন কৰি কিনা তাই আজি মিডিয়া ফ্ৰেন্ড খান কে বেছি আলাক আলাক লৈ কিনা তাই নিজৰ কমিটমেন্ট কৰি কিনা তাই থ্ৰু নাগা লিডাৰ কৰিব কিনা তাই বি আজি কমিটমেন্ট কৰি দিছে আৰু তাই নাগা মানুহ লগা যোনটো এটা লিডাৰশিপ দি আছে তালা গভৰ্নমেন্ট স্ট্ৰং দি যাবলৈ আছে কই কিনা তাই বি পাব্লিকে জানাই দিছে তো ইটা অলপ ক'বলৈ মন থাকিছে কি ইটা মান বেছি কনফিউজন থাকিব ইটা কোন প্ৰেসিডেন্ট কৰিব বেছি কনফিউজন থাকিব তলে তো অটোমেটিকলি ইটা যোন তো ভাইস প্ৰেসিডেন্ট আছে প্ৰেসিডেন্ট কে এমপিছ কৰিছে তো ভাইস প্ৰেসিডেন্ট নি ইটা প্ৰেসিডেন্ট কৰিবলৈ আছে সো লংমাইবা ইম কম কই কিনা তাই আমি স্ক্ৰিন ডেটা নাম্বি দিব তাই পৰা ইটা NSCN কে লাগাই তলে তো প্ৰেসিডেন্ট কৰিবলৈ আছে কই কিনা ইটো একবাৰ জানাই দিয়া আছে আপকান কনফিউজন বি থাকিব কি আলাক আলাক লাগা কেমেৰামেন অলপ ইফানাইব দিবলৈ মন থাকিছে টান ডিসাইড মানে বেছি কনফিউজন থাকা দিলে কিলে একজন পৰা একজনকে ইমপিচমেন্ট কৰে একজন পৰা একটাকে ইমপিচমেন্ট কৰিলে একটা পৰা আৰু একটাকে ইমপিচমেন্ট কৰি কিনা আলাক আলাক ফিকশন তো ওলাই যায় আছে ইটো কমন পাব্লিক প্লেটফৰ্ম ক'বলৈ মন থাকিছে কি ইটো হৈ যা কানি তো হলে তো আলাক ফিকশন ক্ৰিয়েচন কৰান হয় হলিবি যোনটো সিভিল অৰ্গানাইজেশ্যন খান পৰা আৰু সিভিল উইন হবি আৰ্মি হবি তাই লগতে 95% তাই লগতে মেজৰিটি বহি কিনে এতিয়া তাই লগতে সাপোর্ট আছে গৈ কিনে দুবে একবাৰ মই জেৰা গ্ৰাউন্ড দেখাব পাৰি আছে আপনি কান বি দেখিব পাৰি আছে আৰু এটা আপোনাৰ শৰ্ট ইন্টাৰভিউ আমি কান লাগা সৰ আইজাক Ato Kilonser NSCN কে লাগা শর্ট ইন্টারভিউ আনিবলৈ আছে মৰম পৰা ভিডিও স্কিপ না কৰি কিনা তাই নিজৰ তাইলা মুখ পৰা কি কৰিছে গভৰ্নমেন্ট কাৰনি নাগা মন কাৰনি তাই কি কৰিবলৈ আছে তাই নিজৰ মুখ পৰা ইন্টাৰভিউ দি আছে মৰম পৰা ভিডিও স্কিপ না কৰি কিনা চাই দিবি কৈ কিনে দিবি ৰিকুৱেষ্ট কৰিছে থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ
Before taking your question, I would like to share a brief testimony of mine, a brief journey of mine during the course of my struggle in the cause. I intentionally chose this particular day, the Sunday, which is considered very special and spiritual for the Christian world. Yeah, recently there has been a development within our government, an unfortunate development. And even though my credibility, my integrity has been challenged and shadow has been cast on my characters, however, I would not like to defend myself. I chose this personal day, this Sunday, because I would like to bare myself naked before the Naga people and before God. As a human being, and still a young blood, during my almost 2-decade journey in the Naga struggle, and I being basically from the military setup, from the military formation, we have committed lots of unfortunate atrocities while in the battle, while in the conflict, but that was nothing personal, and it was all circumstantial. It was all because of the issue-related conflict related. I've been through so many hell. I've faced death many times. Many of my comrades before me, besides me, behind me. They have fallen in the battle. We have taken lives of the adversaries, but for the cause. We feel very sorry and we regret for the loss of lives that has incurred all through the struggle. Either friend or enemy, a soldier is to be honored, and therefore I pay my tribute to all the fallen heroes and soldiers, regardless of friends or enemies. Now, I would like to refocus on the few allegations that has been made against me, especially with regard to my personal characters, my personal conduct. I feel convinced and I feel very grateful to my comrades and calm accusers for exposing certain uncomfortable personal issues in the media. Now I realize that in order to represent my people, in order to represent the Nagas, and in order to be true to the calling Nagaland for Christ, a person who has a darker side of the story concealed, kept in concealment, I feel that they should not lead the Nagas. So I took the opportunity today and I would like to make myself clear before the Nagas, before God and before the world, and let them take their own judgment. So in the year 2015, we abrogated the ceasefire with the government of India, and we went back to the war path. I crossed over to the Naga Myanmar area. I was stationed there for at least 3 to 4 years. The environment is such that it happens to be a location where it is close to Golden Triangle. And even in the Naga area still now, opium cultivation is a source of income. Opium itself is a cash, it's a currency, it's a food. Even the church members, because of the lack of economic development in the area, opium is still used as a currency of exchange. During my graduation and post-graduation day, I have already become a social drinker. I also had a brief stint in the media. Even though I do not have a media certificate of media diplomat certificate, I also did my internship at IAMC Delhi under the patronage of the Nagaland University. And then after I joined the Naga struggle, gradually as I've said, when we crossed over to Naga Myanmar area after the abrogation of ceasefire, we were placed in such an environment where the temptation was too strong, and because of the lack of any other amenities or medical facilities, I became addicted to opium. And gradually it progressed to heroin. So I was addicted to opium and heroin for at least 3 or 4 years while there in Burma. But the crisis erupted in the NSCN government due to the sudden expiry of SS Kaplang. So I would like to make a connection with that. In the year 2017, SS Kaplang expired suddenly. And our former president, Baba Kango, he was also stationed somewhere away from the council, which was located in the Kaka area. I was also deployed somewhere in the border area. So while going down to SS Kaplang's funeral, I happened to meet our Baba Lieutenant General, former President Baba Kango, at Khamti. And so before we proceed down to Taka for the funeral of our president, we already received the news that the incumbent Army Chief General Kumchop has been appointed as the interim president. So it was a very shocking news because the incumbent vice president was Baba Kango, and even before we reached the federal spot, they have already elected the interim president. And therefore, I convinced him not to worry about it because we have the constitution and the constitution will speak. And therefore we proceed down, and then I convinced the interim president's son, who was also working with us. I spoke to the Pangmi leaders, I spoke to Connect leaders, I spoke to Sumi leaders there in the council, and then I offered my advice that until that day we achieve our victory, until the day the struggle culminates into victory, we should be guiding our forces, we should be directing our forces, and we should ourselves abide by the constitution, or else there will be no more law and order, there will be no more order, and there will be no more, the sanctity of the government will no more be there, and the ethos of the revolutionary struggle will erode. And therefore we must abide by the constitution. Somehow we convinced them, and Baba Kango was appointed as the president. In that time, he can testify to that as to what extent I tried to diffuse the conflict in that time also. And so, for a year, he served as the president. But since he cannot acclimatize himself with the hot weather down there in the valley, so he went back to his previous camp. He entrusted one of his PS to carry out his activities. And then it seems he gave certain uncomfortable directive to the finance workers. So it seems there was some miscommunication. And therefore, especially the Pangmi leaders, they convened an emergency meeting, and then all of a sudden they impeached the president. And when the impeachment of the president reached me, I was stationed far away from Baba Kango. And then Baba Kango, since he has been expelled, especially at the instigation, especially with the plan of the Pangmi leaders, and since the majority of the Naga inhabited areas are settled by the Pangmis, so he decided to leave Pangmi area and then escape to his Connect area. So it seems his nephew, who is a Kilonser now with us, he was the only Kilonser with him, and some of his boys, they somehow managed to reach his Connect area safely without any untoward incident. And then I was told that since there was no telephonic facility also, we could not communicate. So when some of the Connect community leaders, they crossed over the border and reached me, we had certain interaction and we met some strategies. I wrote a confidential letter and sent it to Baba Kango, saying that until and unless I reach there, give no press statement, make no commitment, whatever may be the approach from different factions, give no response, just wait for me. I sent a confidential letter to Baba Kango through the ex-Connect Student Union General Secretary. They can testify. And so before reaching Baba Kango, I communicated with the GHQ, and then the GHQ camp commander and all the high-ranking officers in the GHQ, they agreed to my proposal. That since the Nagas from Indian side, they are all longing for an early solution. And even though we Nagas are all brothers, the Nagas are already divided by an artificial boundary, and the Nagas are primarily divided into Myanmar Nagas and Indian Nagas. So it is not conceivable at the moment that there will be a one solution for all the Nagas. That became impossible. And so I reasoned with them, for the time being, the Nagas of Indian side, let us go for a settlement with the government of India. In the meantime, we can also assist in whatever manner and help the Naga brothers in Myanmar to have a solution with the Myanmar government, so that when the time comes, the Nagas may once again try to work out Indo-Naga-Myanmar issue in one table, tripartite negotiation. That's what I proposed. And with the blessing of God, without any violence or without any misunderstanding, the majority of the Nagas from the Indian side, we all went on one day, and we went, after trekking jungle, we went together to reach Baba Kango camp. After that, I went to the border where I could avail the phone facility, and then I contacted the Indian leaders, and I gave them the commitment that give us 2 days, 2 weeks or 3 weeks time. Within that time frame, I will organize my colleagues and gathers, and we will try to enter into the negotiation. But even before that, the government of India has been sending their feelers to come over and enter into the abrogated peace process. So that was a brief past history. And we sent the representative Naga leaders representing our interests to the government of India. The government of India responded positively, and so we entered into the peace process, and thus began our new chapter in the Indian side. Now, preparing to cross over to Indian side, I cannot, with that addicted state, I don't find myself in a position to cross over in such a manner, so I called over my wife. He came with all the first aids, all the medicines, and for at least 2-3 weeks, I had a very excruciating ordeal. But finally, I managed to give up heroin, and then we crossed over to Indian side. But since the recovery is a long process, gradually I started drinking again. And at least for a year, I was heavily entangled in drinking. But then there was a lot of dissatisfaction, there was a lot of mistakes I started committing. So I realized that in order to bring changes, I should change myself. And so, thinking so seriously about myself and my role as a representative of the Nagas negotiating with the government of India, I had to re-evaluate myself. I have to set an example myself. I have to set an example for my comrades and others to follow. So I took the firm decision that I shall no longer indulge in these things, and with God's grace and with the support of my wife, my family, and my friends, after undergoing treatment for several times, I finally gave up all the abuses, substance abuses, alcoholic addiction, and then it's been 2 years now that I have been freed from all these kind of antisocial characters. Therefore, today, what I would like to convey my message to our people is that we know that the Israelites, they were the chosen people. And God has his responsibility and his own obligation there. But for we Nagas, we decided ourselves to choose God, and so we declared Nagaland for Christ on our own volition. So we have greater responsibility. And since the evil forces will do everything in their power to smear the banner Nagaland for Christ, and since we are not that strong enough to resist the evil forces, and therefore it is especially the national workers who are supposed to be the example of the teachings of Jesus Christ, we have become the most notorious characters, including myself. And with evil forces actively conniving to destroy the commitment that the Nagas has declared, the division, the killing, fratricidal violence, it started since the unfortunate 1975 Shillong Accord. And now the splits, the divisions, the infightings, it has become the order of the day. Now extortions, killings, intimidation, threat, it has become more or less identified with the national workers. Now the Nagas are eroding, the confidence of the Naga people are already eroding. And it has become a very sad state of affairs. Therefore, even in this particular controversy, I would not blame Baba Khango, because he's a very senior leader. He's a veteran of 1960. He has been to China twice, and he's one of the most foremost and one of the most ablest commander in the Naga army who is still alive today. Therefore, regardless of the misguidance, regardless of the plot that has been orchestrated by others, and he has been misguided, he has been misdirected, I do not lay any blame on him, because all this crisis did not originate from him itself. It has been fed by the others. These things, it will come to light, I believe, in the right time. Those people responsible for it, so I would not comment on that. So, and I do not like to smear his reputation or his image, because he was a very fatherly figure to me, and he has also reached his concluding stages of life. So all his efforts and sacrifices, I cannot allow myself to smear his image or his sacrifices under any circumstances. And therefore, despite my termination order issued without consulting even a single worker of the NSCN, it was only his nephew, Mr. Shellen, and he alone and Baba Khanga alone, with the instigation of others, without consulting even a single other national workers, Baba Khanga issued a termination order unconstitutionally, arbitrarily, and therefore, if I were in his position, or if he were in my position, I may resort to so much mudslinging or character assassination or cheap propagandas, but that I cannot allow myself to go down to that level. And so I extended an olive branch and made an appeal to Baba Khanga that despite all my weaknesses, I being like your son, if you could kindly forgive me, I'm still ready to make apology, ask for forgiveness, and reconcile and go together. So also our Honorable Convener of the Working Committee, NNPG, he also made an appeal to Baba Khanga to revoke his order, and therefore we waited for him for 2-3 days, but there was no positive response. And therefore our government, with all the branches, civil wing, political wing, secretariat wing, almost 99% of the regional authorities, almost 90% of the grassroots level workers, led by the Ato Kilonser, led by the Tatar Hoho, Parliament Hoho Speaker, led by the Chief Secretary, led by the ceasefire supervisor, and led by their senior army commanders, they convened an emergency meeting. And since the positive response was not forthcoming from Baba Khanga, they adopted a resolution that Baba Khanga will be impeached, and our incumbent Vice President, Lunyanba will be appointed as the acting president. So it is very unfortunate. It was not my personal decision. It was the decision of the entire setup. Because of certain unfortunate incident, we cannot get stuck with that and lose sight of the goal that we are pursuing. So we will continue to carry on with the tasks which have been entrusted to us. We will honor the ceasefire agreement which we have arrived at with the government of India. And I will continue to be the co-convener of the Working Committee NNPG, representing our NSCN GPRN. And the NNPG Working Committee has also had an emergency meeting and took a resolution that even if single person remains with Isak, we will not desert him. Even if 1,000 return to Baba Khanga, we cannot accept him. Because at this very crucial juncture, when the entire Nagas are longing for an early solution, and when the unity of the Nagas is so imminent, why should he resort to such unconstitutional and unilateral act, which clearly is designed to sabotage the peace process and the Nagas call for early solution? That is the reason why the NNPGs also collectively made a decision that if Baba Khango refused to comply to our appeal, then the NSCN may take its own course of action, which, if it is done in a proper procedure manner, then the NNPG Working Committee will also endorse it. And that is the reason why we have arrived at the decision that Baba Khango should be impeached, so that we can pursue our goal unhindered. And so that is what I would like to interact with you today. So thank you so much. And if you would like to ask certain questions, let's go ahead with that.
So, are you willing to come to this agreement?
I have made myself very clear that I do not harbor any ill feelings towards Baba Khango. I'm still ready for reconciliation. However, since our government has already adopted an impeachment resolution, I will have to convince my cabinet, the Council of Kilonsers, and the entire House. I have to convince them to revoke the decision. If Baba is willing, I'm all the time willing. That's what I would like to say.
President, the Vice President will be, is going to be a president.
Yeah, that's automatically that's the procedure. In the absence or in the event of expiry or termination of the president, the vice president automatically assumes the acting president's role.
Have you conveyed to the government of India about the recent developments?
The government of India is taking stock of the entire situation. We are having a constant intimation with the government of India through all the proper channels.
Consider party workers are you willing to take them?
Yeah, I got your point. You see, we are not trying to form a new government. It is not in our interest or in our intention to form a new government. It is just the removal of the impeachment of the president. Otherwise, the entire setup remains intact.
So, sir, one more question. So, as per the sources, all the regions are with you, with your government. So, how about the Konyak region?
Konyak region, the authority, they are giving intimation through the phone, but physically they have not reached here. And so, yeah, I understand the position also.
Sir, just one more thing. Since you mentioned that Sir Khango has already been impeached,
Yeah.
what about his the forces that are with him?
What is the strength of the forces and the strength that you have? What is the percentage you would say?
The entire civil wing, the political wing, all the branches of the government, except for two Kilonser, except for two secretary, the entire political wing, civil wing, and all the, at least 95% of the regional authorities, they are entirely with me and the incumbent acting president. Whereas for the military, two senior commanders, our army chief and the deputy chief, they are still at the camp, designated camp, which is in Baba Khango's village. So it is good that I make no comment on that, because the situation is dicey. And since we are trying our best effort to reconcile, not to create any other new group, let me be very, I should say, it's not an appropriate time to make comment on such thing.
Are you also planning to ask for a designated camp for yourself?
No, we still have a designated camp. So what will be the development, how the situation will evolve, and to what extent the government of India will intervene, and to what extent the Naga people will react, or taking all this into consideration, let the situation evolve.
So, as you said, you already have your designated camp.
Yeah.
So, designated camp was impeachment. So,
No, it was not in the camp. It was in his village and in his personal residence. Because the deputy army chief and the deputy chief themselves spoke over the phone in the presence of so many of us through the loudspeaker. They denied that they have no involvement, they have no information, they have no consent, and so even include our name as signed in absentia, include our name in the condemnation of this act.
So which means the designated game which has been provided to you is well being in your hand.
Yeah, it still belongs to the government, and the government setup is still intact. And since we have only one designated camp, and we still have only one government, it belongs to all of us.
Because usually that is what happens when we've seen it in the past, that the nomenclature remains the same and then there's a big confusion between two governments.
No, it is the prefix. I mean, it is the suffix added by the press fraternity for identification because of so many factions. Otherwise, it has always been NSCN GPRN. So whatever suffix you find it comfortable to use, you can go ahead with that. Okay, I think Max Naga has been talking about something to my friend. Wish you all the best.
Last tak video sai dia karni ami khan lasur Isaac bra ki koise ami khan bhal bra hunishe pare moi eto kobole mon takse ki common public platform as an independent media apni religious te na chobi apni civil organization la tribalism te na chobi apni factional clash te apni awaz na uthabi koise holi bi eto kobole mon ase I'm independent media hobi ki bu hobi naga man la problem ko ase common public platform tata hege video shooting kori dibo sob naga man ke janibo dibo kila mani mo ki bishi training bi kori ge na ase apni factional class dile to apni iku nakabi koise apni tribalism de jati la kotha de common public platform de iku nakabi koi kina moi logodi bishi allegation dige na se warning bi dige na so libi moi la arms dile to mala camera ase itu logode hussa kotha bra hussa la camera hussa la photo legina kichigina nagaman lode lare ko thakibo aru parisha gole to I will talk to the Indian also. Thank you so much once again. Kiman jun balas tak saya sob ke dunia ba dia sa ro itia ami kan laga sir Isaac laga office te matlab NSCN ke laga office dia ami kan ahi kan interview lobo para laga sob ke naga man ke dikhawole kila mani common public platform ite iku ko nai ko ne bisi man video rakhi ta kise itu pra short interview ani dise moron bra itu video be share kori digina naga man sob ke janibo dibi ki aji kali nagala situation inika ase aru ami kan laga sir Isaac la mondi ki ase ta itu koi dise itu pra hi apni kan moron bra itu be share kori dibi age te tala video apni kin ka share kori gena tai ge ki comments te koise itu ne chana AGP itu naga manu iman jun ahigina ta ke support kori ase alak region bra ahigina be support kori ase YouTube bra comment section te bi kobi aru moron bra video te share kori di gena ami kan itu problem tu clear and solve of krubole moron bra video share kori dibi koi gena aru ekbar sab ke request kore ase thank you so much moi laga news aru khobor tu kan huni dia karni once again CBP need your support aru naga manu kan parthana kori dibi nagala situation ineka hoy gene bishi upor niche hoy thaki ase YouTube pra ite ami hoti bole mon thaki ase ki kiman apkan video te sai ase ita sabi gari kiman ahi gena ase man kiman ahi gena ase morom pra naga manukan isur jana manukan naga manu bhal hobo nimite video share kori gena itu prayer request pathai dibi aru naga manu majote bhal hobo nimite moi common public platform sub ke request kore ase aru parthana kori dibi koi gena aru ekbar apnan khan lode request kore ase thank you so much for watching my news channel.